we're going to stop for a minute.
It don't fully add up. Do you know what I'm saying?
No. I listened to someone who was talking
Mary's got
about
a cousin called, what's her name?
the
Whatever
Cathecism.
Mary's cousin was.
Yeah.
And
she
it
worked
was
in the
saying,
house.
I don't know if you know, it's 841.
Decide
Okay, that's
to
around the
somehow
church in the
pregnant.
world. Go on anyway.
And it's a miracle.
Yeah, it's the one about
Church of the Catholic Church of non-believers.
She's married to Joseph. She's married to
It says the church's relationship with the Muslims.
Okay, right.
Yeah, and it says the plan of salvation also includes those who acknowledge the Creator in the first place, amongst whom are the Muslims.
Yes.
These profess to hold the faith of Abraham, and together with us they adore the one merciful God, mankind's judge on the last day.
There's no bottled water back in Jesus'.
Shocking, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, let me explain. You're not the first one who's kind of like, they're not quoted directly that, but they've got that idea. They know what it's saying. Firstly, you notice how it says they profess to hold the faith of Abraham.
Yeah.
That's deliberate, because it's saying in the most polite way that they don't hold the faith of Abraham. Okay?
Yeah.
That's first thing, right? Next thing is, we say they worship the Creator, right? Which is the most shocking for non-Catholic Christians to hear or say. Here's how it goes, and you know you've heard me many times. Firstly, I say this: the Muslims, insofar as they believe in a Creator of the entire universe, they believe in the Creator. They worship God, the Creator. But we can know much more about the Creator than just that He's the Creator of the universe.
Yeah.
Great that they're not atheists. But so they don't know that God is a trinity. So they're not worshiping. So if they don't acknowledge the Trinity under that aspect, they're not worshiping God.
Yeah.
Because they're not worshiping the true God as He actually is. I say this because you could be somebody who's ignorant in the desert or a forest, and you just somehow think about it. Think, all this must have been made by someone. It must have been made by the most powerful being ever. And you start worshipping that being just by using your common sense, your reason. That is the person who's worshipping God, but they know nothing about Him. But they're worshipping God. And the Muslims are like that. But they've added other stuff where you can say, unlike that person in the desert, these are also not worshipping God. In the sense they're not getting God right, and they're contradicting the truths about God which we know. So the key thing is, for me, that we see Muslims under at least those two aspects.
Right.
And we acknowledge what they have, but seek to bring them beyond they're beyond the atheists. They're better than the atheists, but they need to be brought further into the absolute truth. And that's what it's really saying. We're acknowledging what they have, but saying they don't profess the faith of Abraham. And that's what they need to profess.
Yeah. So when was this put in though? Because obviously it can't have been there from the beginning.
The Cathecism is a 1992 document.
Oh right.
And but that statement itself comes from the Second Vatican Council, and the footnote to that document will probably say which document it is. Possibly they'll say LG, which is Lumen Gentium, which is a particular document from the council.
Right.
Does it give a footnote?
But we may be fragments of God. Everyone has a little bit of blood of Christ, or whatever you want to call it. If Christ was blood, and then you've got a bit of Christ there, a bit of Christ there, a bit of Christ there, a bit of Christ everywhere. Everyone's one unit of Christ. And they're all moving around like little droplets on the earth.
But it's got the... It's a 330, the footnote.
So 841 is there, it says 330.
Yeah.
Oh, so have you got footnote 330 then? Or is it not hot linked, so you can't hyperlink, so you can't get to it? Never mind, I think it will be Lumen Gentium, the Vatican Council document. Now the Second Vatican Council took place between 1962 and 1965.
Right.
And it was basically looking at these other religions. Now, our general view has been, we have a prayer for the conversion of the Muslims. It says in the 19th century, it says that they may come out of the darkness of Mohammedanism. Right? So, that's a really clear statement that we know they're not following the right religion.
Yeah.
But at other times, you go back to the Middle Ages, the 11th century, Pope, I think it's Leo the IX, who describes in a letter to the Sultan of somewhere. Talks about how we believe in one God, right? Because that's acknowledging that aspect of their belief.
So your energy goes somewhere
Just
else.
there's a deficiency.
It doesn't matter.
So this is all in conformity with Catholic tradition, and I think it makes common sense too. But we say that Allah, Allah is perhaps maybe the god La, the pagan god of the Arabs.
Yeah, from before Muhammad.
But that doesn't mean a Muslim today, or even after the time of Muhammad, when he was worshipping Allah, that he really thought it's that pagan god. He thinks it's the creator of the universe. So we're saying we know really these Muslims believe they're worshipping the creator of the universe. And so God is surely going to accept that fact. They're not like Hindus who might worship a kind of a lesser deity. They're different. I want to say the Hindus, though, we can acknowledge, in a sense, they have a belief in one God as well, in a sense. I don't know the details. But insofar as they would say they praying to that God, then we can acknowledge them. But I don't know enough about Hinduism.
Yeah, I don't think they do, because I think probably the reason why they've chosen the Muslims is because I think that's the only belief. Well, the other one they could have chosen is Zorastrians, but I think they don't exist anymore. So I think because the Muslims are still around. So because I think if the Zoroastrians still had like a established belief somewhere in, I don't know, I think it's in the Persia.
I mean, Freddie Mercury was Zoroastrian. There are some of them. The singer in in Queen. Like the band Queen in the 70s. He was a Zoroastrian. Freddie Mercury.
There's a guy over there I heard talking about it as well, talking about the fire altar and all that.
All right. So but there's small number. You're right. So the church. So we're not mentioning them for that reason. They're just insignificant now.
Yeah.
But the church talks about the Jews. I think actually so it may talk about the Eastern Orthodox first, and then the Protestants, then the Jews, and then the Muslims. It's like going out, spiraling out from the different groups who are close to us and then further away.
Yeah, the Jews are 839.
Okay.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah, those who have not really, Jewish.
If you find a time travel,
and then in 840,
or he's like this miracle magic thing.
Yeah, then 841 is the Muslims.
And then after that goes to the pagans after that, won't it?
It's just the bond with non-Christian religions is in the common origin and end of the human race. So it's this I don't know how you say it, where they try to now bring have a relation with the other beliefs or people who believe in God. Was this? Where was? When did this change happen? Because I presume that originally when the Catholics were out, say Nicaea time coming up, they would never. I want to see how they would have had all this in their belief.
You're absolutely right. Here's what happens. We have going back before the 1960s. A view where we didn't really have anything to say about the false religions, right? Even the Protestants or the Greek Orthodox. But in the 1960s, we started looking at it from a different angle. That is seeing what's positive about them, and how we're all. And of course, in the modern age, we've come to see the world as one human family, even more because of communications.
Yeah, true.
And so I think there's a recognition of a desire, of a need to start addressing these other peoples with their other religions, some way or other, rather than just saying, well, they're false.
Because actually I was thinking maybe it was to do with the war as well, because one of the things that causes wars is when nations are peoples are hard against each other and don't communicate. But once you have a cross communication between countries, you actually reduce the chances of having wars between them as well.
The war was definitely a major event, I think, in the church's thinking, particularly by the 1960s, which this council was less than 20 years after the war. So we have, particularly in relation to the Jews, that's why you get a more positive approach to the Jews, because the Jewish question was dealt with in a very different way before. And I think that, although I can agree with everything in the council documents, and everything in the council, in the Cathecism,
Judaic
I still
way,
think we
say,
take an
well,
approach
no,
to the false
our religion
religions,
comes through the mother.
including the Jewish religion, which is a bit too soft.
We don't want
Yeah.
But that's not the council.
blame you,
That's not the
but,
official
you know, it's
documents.
Kind of a way of
That's
fighting
churchmen
the issue of just kind of reconciling
who've not
a
actually,
fucking
they've gone too
shitty
far
problem, but still celebrating life
in being
Oh,
positive about these false religions.
Yeah, because I've heard some of the things that were said about the
But
Islam,
shit
which
happens in life
is
which
like
not
beyond
good.
what's written
Like,
here.
shit
Yeah,
Like, you know,
that's
like
it.
what-
That's
yeah.
it. I'm totally with that. That's there.
Yeah.
But we still have to say to the Muslims,
Children,
look,
like, need to know
you've got
that
a false
they're
God
safe.
here.
Yeah.
We appreciate what you're doing,
Yeah.
but it's limited and it's got a false God.
And
A false Jesus.
Like,
And we will
people
say,
love
and
being
here's the
treated
trickiest
like
thing, but we have to say
royalty.
to the
Like, children
Jews,
have to be
you've got a
treated,
false
they
God.
have to be served. Old
Because
people love
don't
it
forget,
because, you know,
these
they're
Jews
capable
today are
of,
rabbinic
like, cooking
Jews
for
who
themselves
follow
or
the
something
Talmud.
like that.
They're not the Jews of the Old Testament who just hung on in there for 19 centuries.
Yeah, true.
They're not. They invented a new religion, Talmudic Judaism or Rabbinic
Under
Judaism.
law,
Yeah.
And so we have to address
But
that.
ethically,
So they are,
they're not
because if they worship the one God,
They have to
yes, they're
process
doing it in the way the
so they can
Muslims
get
are.
out of victimhood.
But on the other hand, they've got a false God, because after all, if you believe in the Holy Trinity, and they're not believing in the Holy Trinity, they're worshipping a false God. In that aspect, like the Muslims worship a false God.
Well, actually, it's interesting you say that because I was speaking to Josh, and one thing interesting he said about, you know, in relation to Isaiah 53,
Yeah.
he says that there are some Jews or of their rabbis that teach that that person mentioned in Isaiah 53 could be Rabbi Akiva. Yeah, I don't know if you've
Okay,
heard
right.
that.
Rabbi Akiva who anointed Bar Kokhba.
Well, yeah, I don't know the details, but that's the name that he mentioned. So this is like really early. It's like in, I can't remember exactly when, but it was in
not sufficient condition.
really early on, like in the 3rd century or something.
Well, I thought he was actually about the middle of the 1st century when the Bar Kokhba revolt.
Yeah,
So middle of the 2nd century when the Bar Kokhba revolt occurred.
Yeah, sometime way back then.
Yeah.
And so, but it's a fact like you're saying.
Because he's a major figure in the establishment of Talmudic or Rabbinic Judaism.
All right.
So that's why I think that Josh may have said that some believe it. It's so central.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's not the way of trying to well, it's to counter the way that the Christians are using Isaiah 53.
It's also very silly though, because you know the things that are said about that character in Isaiah 52, 53 is just way above any human being that we can imagine.
Yeah.
So I think that they're on a sticky wicket. But then, you know, Josh's religion is bonkers. It's worse than Islam because they have, you know, this idea. You know, the Muslims, their silly idea of, you know, the hadith, and they get passed on for 200 years.
Yeah.
They get that's nonsense. But the Jews, they have the oral law that goes from Mount Sinai all the way to the Talmud, and that's 1500 years to Jesus, and then another 500 years to the Talmud. 2,000 years of oral law being passed on without any of it being written down.
All right. Yeah.
So you know, you get crazy with the Muslims, we get crazy with the Jews.
Well, I suppose you can see because especially like even when it said when Jesus talked to them and it talks about the washing. You remember the way you have to wash your hands before you eat, and then Jesus said about washing of cups and something else, didn't it? So obviously they really did have all those extra things then.
Yes. And so the oral law was there then. I mean, not as a real oral law from Sinai, as they pretend it was from Sinai, but you know they were adding their own stuff, and Jesus is nailing that.
Yeah.
But they just built upon it. They continued with this. But it's fascinating to see these Jews of today are kind of bear witness to a certain authenticity of the gospel, because if Jesus is criticising things that are being done with this oral law idea at his time, that shows that the Jews it shows the gospel are authentic, because in the 1st century AD, if Jesus is referring to these oral traditions, and we know the modern Jews believe in those oral traditions, then definitely those gospel writers were describing what was actually happening at the time of Jesus.
Yeah.
So it's a nice little proof for us, or evidence at the very least.
And then the other thing as well is the fact that when they talk about Jesus in a derogatory way in the Talmud, and if Jesus didn't exist and it was just a bunch of people making some noise, they wouldn't have taken it seriously. But when someone comes and actually is like a thorn in their flesh, that obviously it's a thing that would inspire someone to do some big writings on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, what I've read about those early days, the early times of Jesus and his followers, after Jesus left the earth, the Jews were extreme. There was a kind of now between us and the Jews now, it's clear cut difference. But in the first century or two, it wasn't so clear cut. There seemed to be this merging of borders.
Yes, a lot of Christians, most of them were Jews, isn't it? Early on.
Yeah. So, but also though, you get this kind of like ordinary Jews who weren't yet Christians would still be attracted and be involved with Christianity to some degree.
Yeah.
And so this blurring of the division worried the rabbis, and worried us as well. So both forces pulled the two apart to make the borderlines clear. And from the Jewish side, what they would do, they would make of Jesus an absolute criminal. And they would forbid the reading of the New Testament. And they'd anathematize those who would do it.
Yeah, I was going to say, and Mary as well.
She was a bad one for them. Awful things in the Talmud about her. But I've got copies of from the Talmud curses against Jews who would read the prophet Daniel chapter 9 and interpret the 70 weeks prophecy, because they knew that they would always come to the time of Jesus, and that would turn Jews into Christians. It's fascinating how desperate they were. But of course, when you've got that going on in the first few centuries, subsequent generations of Jews are going to have a hatred of Christ. So you can be a Jew who converts to Buddhism, converts to Islam, converts to anything. When you convert to Christianity, you're no longer a Jew. It just shows the absolute hatred of our religion. Okay. Look, I may not be back here next Sunday, so have a good. You don't celebrate Christmas, I think.
No, just call it holiday season.
Have a wonderful time, and prayerful time. All right,
and you as well.
God bless.
Israelites will return to take down Islam.